Good morning. We need to keep in prayer those who have lost lives on the West Coast, in Midland, Odessa, over the weekend, but also those that are in the path of the storm, Hurricane Dorian. Have no relationship to Dorian Cooper Cox. Just want you to know that. We have a number of grads, I think four different grads in the Bahamas. We have a student, a current student who emailed us and said when he comes up for air and can get back online, but we've not heard from them. And so let's keep all of them in our prayers as we go forward. In 1996, after graduating from Dallas Seminary, Pastor Neil Tomba joined the staff of Northwest Bible Church, and then 5 years later was appointed as their senior pastor. He has served in that capacity for the last 18 years. He's married to his wife, Vila, who is here. Vila, would you stand where you are seated? There you go. She now is a student and plans to graduate in May. They have 3 adult children and 3 adult daughters and 2 sons-in-laws. In June, they traveled together. Neil cycled 3,000 miles across the United States, covering about 100 miles a day for 30 days. They went from Costa Mesa, California to Annapolis, Maryland, having conversations about faith and Jesus with individuals from all walks of life. He may tell you more about that and how you can follow that. But as a desperately dependent follower of Jesus Christ, Neil would term himself, his passion is to invite others into that unexpected life of joy with him. His favorite place is to hang out with others as they hang out with Jesus, indoors, outdoors, but especially outdoors. He loves biking, hiking, camping, taking pictures, and eating a good steak. Neil, thank you for your years of faithful service, modeling, staying in the same place, doing the job day after day, week after week, year after year. Would you join me in welcoming Pastor Neil Tomba?
Thank you, Dr. Bell. Thank you for those kind words. Good morning. I am thankful to be here today, and I have one reason I'll share second, but I was a little surprised when I got here today just to see lots of friends here, friends who have impacted my life, invested in my life, and who have hung with me, and it's just fun to look around. I'm also thankful for being here because I get to preach here this morning, and my favorite preacher is in the audience, okay? Vila Tomba. I'll tell you, when Vila ever speaks at our church, I can't tell you how many of the ladies come up to me and say things like this. Neil, did you know Vila's really funny? I'm like, yeah. And one lady said to me, you need to be funnier. So this morning, I would like you to turn with me to 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. And we're going to talk today about this verse in light of what I learned while riding my bike across the United States this past June. And Vila was with me, and I can't imagine what it's like to ride in a car 15 miles an hour across the U.S. If you want to hear the other side of the story, Vila is speaking tomorrow night at our recovery ministry and to tell about her recovery from that. So 1 Peter 3:15, what I learned while riding my bike, and here's a picture. Vila told me not to dress like this today. Good advice. So 20 years ago, I had this dream of riding my bike across the country, talking to people, and just documenting it. It took me a while to get after the dream, and some people said, so if you thought about this 18 years ago, why did you finally do it now? And I want to say, because I'm not getting any younger, but we did a survey at our church about 3 years ago. And it wasn't a survey to find out if they liked the preaching or the music. It was a survey to think about how we're doing and making disciples. And the one thing that was so clear was I'm at a church where I'll tell you there are some generous people. who are investing in taking the gospel, the good news of Jesus, to Cuba, to Africa, to Indonesia, to India, to China, and to a Northwest Community Center in Victory for refugees. And yet we kind of confess to each other that we actually didn't talk to the person who's next to us in most of our life, wherever that is. And one of the things just in this deal was I was reading about how 1 in 8 believers who go to church on a regular basis, 1 in 8 have a faith conversation once a week, maybe, and that might just be with somebody in their family. And the other thing was just being a pastor and seeing, even in our own body, the tension between Democrats and Republicans who both call themselves believers, and even struggling with that in the church. What about outside the church? And knowing that people are just like this at each other. And I just said, you know what? Now's the time, especially since out of all that, our church has developed a 7-year vision to take us to our 65th anniversary that goes like this. We will be having thousands of surprisingly easy to start conversations about Jesus all over our city because we're convinced where God has us is where Jesus is. So my passion for this whole idea of having conversations about Jesus started when I was at Louisiana State University. I like to call it the Harvard of the South, but nobody thinks that, so I won't mention it. And I'm there, and I'm find myself in some conversations about Jesus with a guy down the hall from me, and I end up saying this in response to John 1:12, as many as received him. I said, how can I refuse? And through Cru, I learned this little statement: successful witnessing is taking the initiative in the power of the Holy Spirit and leaving the results to God. And I never really got over that. And so right away, I sign up for a trip to Daytona Beach at spring break, okay? And I'm going to tell you, here's what I learned. My number one key in my pocket about talking to people about Jesus, what I learned was you got to be bold. And you do got to be bold. And so I'm on the beach, and at this time, I may be stretching it a little bit. I think I weighed a whole 140 pounds, okay? And I've got these baggy, long beach shorts on, and I go walking up to this guy, so here I am. And I see this dude, he's all muscle. I walk up to him, hey, have you made the wonderful discovery of knowing Jesus personally? And as he's about to throw his frisbee because he's in the surf, he looks at me and says, no, and I don't want to talk to you. So I kind of take all 140 pounds of me and I'm walking off, okay? And I have this thought, wait, boldness is the number one key. So I turn around. I turn around and I walk up and I say, excuse me, you know, the Bible says why you don't want to talk to me. And I'm alive to tell you about it. He says, so what does the Bible say? And I say this: men love the darkness rather than the light. And you know what? He actually talked to me. And here's what I know: 99.9999% of the people in my church are never going to do that. And I'm really glad they're never going to do that. And I'm really glad in a culture where people are already doing this, that might not be the most effective way to have a conversation about Jesus. And I am really thankful to be here today, to look out at women and men who are going to lead others in a culture that not only says don't have conversations, but we've actually got out of practice. And to say, if leaders, we don't lead in this area, the Great Commission will become the Great Omission. And if we don't lead in this area, it ends with our generation, of course, as far as we're concerned. So 1 Peter 3:15 a couple keys that I've learned while riding my bike across the United States besides boldness. 1 Peter 3:15, but in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy. Always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet you do it with gentleness and respect. It strikes me that Peter is writing to a group of people that had been dispersed through the Roman Empire, some people who I'm sure it was hard for them to have conversations, some people who I'm sure that in their day and time, people weren't giving them a big hand for going out and talking about Jesus, and they were thinking less and less fondly of those kind of followers. And the first thing I want to say about a key that goes beyond boldness is this, that we take Jesus seriously. And I know lots of you are here because you take Jesus seriously. But I will tell you, when I was in crew, the thing that I never forgot was this. They told me over and over again, your ministry is an overflow of your relationship with Jesus. And when Peter says, you honor Christ the Lord as holy, what we honor, we value. We put a lot of money, we put a lot of time, we put a lot of effort into the things we value, right? So this bike here is very interesting. This bike is a custom-built bike by a maker in Arkansas. It's called an Allied bike, and I'm part of a cycling team, and I'm the old mascot, okay? But there's about 20 guys on this team, and at the end of last year, they offered us a deal on their frames. Anybody who's bought a really nice bike, they got a great deal on it, trust me. And Gary knows about this. And so when we started buying these bikes, it was interesting to hear the conversation about what people valued, okay? So, hey, how are we going to get this bike painted? Well, maybe we'll make it blue, maybe we'll make it black, maybe we'll have this black-blue fade, and I'm not sure, but what kind of wheels are you going to get? Are you going to get custom-made wheels from Johnny Jones in California, or are you going to get Aero wheels, or are you going to get wheels just standard off a shelf? And then we started talking about this. What kind of brakes are you going to get on your bike? Are you going to get disc brakes like this bike has, or are you just going to get regular rim brakes? And then what kind of drivetrain are we going to have? Are we going to have this, Shimano or SRAM? Are we going to have mechanical? Are we going to have an electrical drivetrain? And on and on and on. What you have is a bunch of guys who are really fluent about talking about the thing they value. Really fluent. And when I say take Jesus seriously, and I think about that word honor is, I really do believe your ability to go out there, my ability to have conversations about Jesus really starts right here, the thing that I value. And I spent a lot of time on this bike. And I spent a lot of time, and I can tell you, wow, these disc brakes, they really can stop me. Can you tell anybody something about why the gospel of Jesus matters to you today? That I'm taking Jesus that seriously. And Peter goes on, he says this thing about being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that's in you. Now, the word defense there, the word apologia, we get apologetics, and I remember when I was coming to know Jesus during those days, I knew enough about the Bible to know that if I was going to follow Jesus, wow, my life was going to look different. And so I started trying to decide, do I really believe the Bible is the Word of God? So I read some apologetics by a guy named Josh McDowell, Evidence That Demands a Verdict. And that was really important. But he's not talking about Josh McDowell here. He's talking about the thing in your heart that you've spent so much time honoring and valuing Jesus, that there is this whole repertoire of hope that is in you that you have to talk about. That Neil has to talk about, the hope that comes from where I'm struggling in life and I see the gospel of Jesus actually makes a difference. The hope that comes after being pastor 35 years and still struggling at times with, wow, does it matter what I'm doing? Am I going to make it through another year? And all of that, and somehow a hope that connects me back to Jesus. I want to show you this picture of Amanda. This is Amanda and her son, an Eagle Scout. We're in Lexington, Virginia. I wanted to get to speak to some students on the William and Lee campus. It was late in the day. We hadn't got a lot of miles in. I said, come on, y'all, we're at lunch. Like, let's go, people. We got to go. And our cameraman walked out front of this restaurant on the street, and all of a sudden, we had a crowd of people asking, what are you doing? And then they're lined up wanting to have conversations. It was the coolest thing. And Wes, who was one of the guys who rode the whole time with us, he's talking to someone, and I got in a conversation with a guy from Alaska, 25-year-old guy. At the end, he goes, I want to read the stories of Jesus. And Vila was talking to Amanda and her son, and I said, okay, y'all, we really need to go now. We're not here to be having all these conversations about Jesus. Come on. And so Vila comes up to me and she says, Neil, I want you to talk to Amanda and her son. And I'm like, Vila, you just talked to her. I don't need to talk to her. Vila says, you're going to talk to her because she's waited 45 minutes. I said, yes, ma'am. So I get in this conversation with Amanda, and Amanda starts talking. Next thing you know, she begins to kind of crack open her heart and share about her disconnection from God. And then Amanda tells me, I found my mother in her bed, dead after suicide. And I'm thinking, okay, we got to talk about hope here. Because I'm just here trying to take Jesus seriously in my own life, and she needs some hope. And I didn't know what to say, but I knew enough to ask her this. Amanda, what's your hope? What's your dream? And I was surprised at her answer. She said, Neil, I love to do art, and I got disconnected from my art. And I feel disconnected from God. And I had some ESV journaling Bibles, just the Gospel of Mark with me. And I said, Amanda, I want to give you something. And I gave her this Bible, and I said, every other page is blank where you can take some notes, draw a picture. And I said, here's something I do sometime. When I'm just reading my Bible, I'll draw a little picture. And I give it to her, and she just lights up, and she says, oh, I'm going to do that. And we take a picture. I might have prayed for her, and I'm getting ready to leave. I said, oh, Amanda, one more thing. Would you do me a favor? Would you, after you draw your first picture, would you send it to me? And I was home for about 4 weeks, and I got this picture from Amanda. And she had a little email with it, but it just told me she was actually reading the stories about Jesus. One key is taking Jesus seriously. The other key obviously involves other people. And looking at 1 Peter 3:15, that you're talking to people with gentleness and respect. And the second key I want to mention is this, that we take people seriously. We take Jesus seriously, we take people seriously, and I'm going to just show you one picture real quick because this guy here was so cool. Jeffrey, Native American, and this taking people seriously, this thing hit me early on the trip where we were going through Native American lands, and I got to interview and film at least 4 conversations with 4 different people of different tribes. Jeffrey gave us that gift of a handmade piece of Laguna pottery. But the thing in talking to Native Americans, I'm so thankful I did it early on the trip. I could tell, man, there was lots of walls and lots of, wow, can I trust this person because of their history? And so Peter, in taking people seriously, says 2 things. You do it with gentleness and respect. Gentleness. I had an agenda to talk to people about Jesus. I wanted to be bold and go talk to people. I wanted to exercise, believe that the power of the Holy Spirit was available. When I say gentleness, in no way am I saying that it's about weakness or doing nothing or having no agenda, but it is somehow taking all that and trying to say, I'm going to exercise some control over my power for the good of others. when I go out and have conversations about Jesus. So we're riding along, and I see this lady out at her doorstep. We're about 150 feet from the street, and I meet Tamika. Now, y'all might notice that Tamika and I look a lot different than each other. And when I pull up to Tamika's house, looking like a mammal, you know what a mammal is? It's a middle-aged man in Lycra, okay? So poor Tamika has this white middle-aged man in Lycra pull up to her house, and I kind of give her my little deal, wanting to talk to her, and she's just like, I'm really busy right now. And she's shuffling through these papers. I said, hey, Tamika, could you just give us 7 minutes? And I was very aware, really from my time with Jeffrey, of I want to be really gentle with Tamika. She's not just an end goal here. And I was very aware of keeping some physical distance from her. You can see I did something I really didn't want to do. I held her dog because that dog was yapping. So I was gentle with that dog. And Tamika's really flat. And I'm thinking, man, my film guy, he's this professional filmmaker, he's just not going to like this very much. But I'm just trying to be gentle and be as flat as she is. And then Tamika says this to me, the one who said she didn't have much time. She says, do you have time for one more story? And gentleness was getting me way farther than boldness would have ever gotten me. And she starts telling me she's got an MSW. She worked with special needs children, that all these papers that we kind of picked all up. She was looking for one paper because she's taking a new job, because the last job she had, the lady who was her supervisor treated her awfully. And then I just kind of stopped and I said, wow, Tamika, I feel some heat coming from you. What would you have done if you had experienced that kind of racism? And I take a deep breath. And I said, Tamika, I'm sorry that you were treated like that by a person who looked like me. Will you forgive me? And we got to talk about church. We got to talk about Jesus. I got to pray with her. And it was just, thank you, Jeffrey and other Native Americans, and Peter saying, you do it. You take people seriously with gentleness and respect. And it's interesting, that word respect. The word fear. I think of, we fear God. We're entering his presence, walking on holy ground. And there was something with those Native Americans that in their minds, you really were walking on holy ground when we walked into their flea market one day. And trying to remember that actually when I'm going to have conversations with people about Jesus, whether it's some muscle-bound dude on a beach in Daytona, or Tamika, or this couple here, I am walking on holy ground. So we're coming up a hill one day, and I see this parking lot and a park and this RV, and I'm thinking, I want to go have a conversation with that guy because he's cleaning a bicycle. This is awesome. But I'd already stopped so many times that day, I didn't want to say, let's stop, y'all, because I thought my team was going to wring my neck. And so I was going past, and somebody said, Neil, there's a conversation. I'm like, great. I pull in, and right away, this guy totally invites us in. We tell him what we're doing. He goes, hold on, let me go warn my wife because she's in the camper so she can at least brush her hair. And then they both come out and they usher us in to the holy ground of their life. They both say, we want to tell you our story. We've both been divorced, and we got married a few years ago. We sold everything we had. They said things like this: we are not super wealthy. We are living frugally. And they're telling me all this stuff. And I found out that she had this Baptist church background. So I heard this line I've heard many times over the 25 years I've been going to Colorado. This is our church out here. And so I think, okay, here's an opportunity where I can connect. And I said, isn't it kind of amazing to think that Jesus created all this? He holds all things together by the word of his power, his beauty, blah, 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 blah. And she does this. Big eye roll, big sigh. And if I was at their house, here's what would have been happening. If I was at their front door, it was, she's closing the door. And you know what I didn't do? I didn't push the door open. I just backed up. And I started talking to him and kind of let her be. And a friend of mine later, who was a pastor friend of mine who was with us that day, kind of challenged me on that. And I talked to him, and he began to share with me his heart about rural America, which we had been through and seen a lot of, just pain. And I came back to her to ask her about my elbow. Because earlier that day, when we were getting ready to start, I just fell over in the parking lot. Because I'm a skilled biker now, that's about 29 days into it, right? I fall over, it's bleeding, and I was really aggravated, and I was really tired. I said, come on, y'all, let's just go. And we're driving. The first thing she says when she sees me is, hey, look at that elbow, let's take care of that. And I kind of brushed her off. I didn't even give her the respect of, here's a woman who wants to care for me because I have something to give her, right? So right before I left, I said, hey, you still up for taking care of my elbow? And it was like she opened the door again. She runs into her RV. She gets out her medical kit. I mean, she goes to great extents to make sure I don't die from this elbow wound. And, I told my friend the best thing that happened in that conversation was her bandaging my elbow. Because I believe that's where she made a connection with somebody who wanted to talk to her about Jesus and who would sing, I believe in you. But she didn't connect when I said, he made the universe right. So just to close here, I want to say that I said about our vision, easy to start conversations. They're not always easy, right? But I do believe we can do this. And the awesome thing, y'all, I know there are times when those easy to start conversations are difficult. I had a guy on my bike team one time who wouldn't talk to me for 3 months. But also there's times when you read in the book of Acts that God gives people favors. They're going out and having conversations. So I'm going to close here with a little video that I made for our church while I was on the trip. We'd send home a video every week just for you to get to hear from Diana, who I met in a hotel lobby. Her daughter's the manager, and she happened to be passing through. And a guy, Mark, who was riding his bike across the country in the other direction, okay? And then we'll just be done. Diana, you mentioned religion, and I have really wanted to press in with people on issues that we're afraid to talk about, assuring people I would be kind and respectful. What does that have to do with any of this for you? What is there any of that?
So shockingly, I don't look like the average Muslim, but I am Muslim. And I've had people say things to me because they don't know that I'm Muslim, and negative things towards Islam because of what's in the news every day.
Mm-hmm.
And there are extremists in every religion.
So how long were you in the military, Mark?
It was 12 years.
12 years. How did that impact you coming out of that? What did you think?
That's a heavy question.
That is a heavy question. I like asking heavy questions,
Well, I was medically retired.
Okay.
For traumatic brain injury, did explosive ordnance disposal. So my bell got rung so many times that my brain would shut off every once in a while.
Where were you doing that?
2 deployments to Iraq and 2 to Afghanistan.
Wow. Thanks, man. Gosh. So, some people see all that crazy stuff, and it causes them to believe in God. Some people see that stuff and they man, if God exists, I don't want any part of it. Some people think, no way. What did that do for you, Mark, and that whole idea?
Coming from a pastor, I feel like you're just giving me another loaded question.
I told you I'm full of them. And you know what, Mark? Hey, let me say this. I really want your opinion. I'm just curious.
I don't share y'all's beliefs. I respect them. But I've had plenty enough close calls, and I do believe in something spiritual out there. I don't know what it is, because there's been many times we're on a mission for no reason at all. I knew something was up. I knew something wasn't right before we even went out on the mission. We either someone got badly hurt, someone got killed, and so I got better and better at trusting his instincts. And I don't know if I ever actually avoided something, but I know there's definitely something greater than us out there. But I don't believe in the Christian faith.
You know, I actually enjoyed talking to Diana and Mark. And I struggle with how far to go, how much do I push an issue. But more than anything, I wanted to open up a dialogue with them, show them that they could have a conversation about spiritual things and Jesus. And I want you to hear their responses at the end of the time. Although we didn't necessarily agree on our views of God and faith and Jesus himself.
I think what you're doing right now is a great thing, of getting out and talking and listening to people. I really do believe that regardless of someone's faith or opinion or origin, the best thing you can do for another human is to listen. Listen without the intent of changing their mind. They're just trying to understand where they're coming from.
And here's one thing that I do notice, and doing it across country is really awesome. We all have to get up in the morning, and we all have to put our pants on the same way, one leg at a time, and we all have to go out to our jobs. We all have to support our families. Even my children are grown now. I still have to help them. And if we could all just go back to that more simplistic way of thinking, you know, it's not being simple-minded. It's just, let's go back to the basics and remember how people used to help each other and go from there and build something better.
I'm praying for us as a church that in 7 years, we are going to have thousands of surprisingly easy to start conversations all over our city, because we are convinced where God has us is where Jesus is.